What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Edison Club. I'm your host, Mike. Today's video is going to be completely raw, unfiltered, unedited. So if you're looking for something super flashy and entertaining, then just keep going, because this is for the real ones. This is for the people that really are struggling within Edison format and looking for an outlet to just get better, and some tips that I've compiled over the last several years of playing the format that I had to go through and kind of just get one by one and make this list. It's not too long of a list, but it is some things I feel like that have been very pivotal in my development as an Edison format Yu-Gi-Oh player. Before we get started, please make sure that you subscribe. I'm just going to cut it off right there. I'm not going to go in with the whole spiel. I'm going to give you a brief history of my Yu-Gi-Oh experience. If you hear some barking, my dog is barking at something outside. I apologize for that. Basically, I started playing Yu-Gi-Oh in 2005, just like everyone else. Playground Yu-Gi-Oh, whatever, however you may call it. People bring their cards to school, play in the cafeteria, play on the playground. My first ever card I got was Zembria the Dark. And I kind of just did that, played with my cousin throughout most of my life. And then eventually we find a local store, which was a candle shop that also sold Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Go figure, I don't think they ever actually sold any candles. But that was like my first real experience going to locals. And this was like, I think it was the format after GOAT format, I'm pretty sure. I don't know, maybe that's Reaper format. I don't know what format that is. But that was my first time really playing Yu-Gi-Oh in like a card shop setting. And we went there for a few years, and eventually, as most card shops do, unfortunately, this is the sad reality that they ended up closing. And then we didn't have a shop for several years, so I kind of stopped playing because there's nowhere to play. Yu-Gi-Oh is a community-based game, so if you don't have that community, you can't do anything. Eventually, we can get another store. It's in a flea market, which was great for us because we went so many years without having anywhere to play. The band's back together. We're all playing cards again. Everything's great. I'm still terrible. And eventually I get my first girlfriend, and then, as I'm sure every man can relate, like that becomes the priority over cards. So I always say, like, I've been trying to learn redo format. And for me, redo is especially hard because I don't know what any of the cards do. Not just because I haven't played in so long, but because I missed that whole format. I had to read Wind Up Rabbit. I had to read Insector Dragonfly. I didn't know what any of those cards did. If they weren't cards that existed prior to that format, I didn't know what any of them do. And I still run across cards whenever I play redo, and I'm like, wow, that card was out then? So I stopped playing for a while then. I come back in full power Dragon Ruler format. And this is just like, all of this is just like the scrub years, honestly. I'm not doing anything in the game. I'm barely able to get an invite to the year's nationals. And I keep playing. I take a break from 2017 up to 2020, start playing again during the pandemic. I think that was kind of the story of most players. Start playing with Dark Magician, which was the basis of which this channel was founded in, Dark Magical Gaming. Start a whole YouTube brand based around Dark Magician. And eventually I hit a ceiling where I was like, I'm not improving. I've been playing for however long, 15 years, 20 years, over 2 decades at this point, and I can't even consistently go to a regional and get my invite for nationals. It was something that I had to like stress over, like, oh, can I get my invite at this one? Can I get my invite at this one? And eventually I was like, I am not okay with it being this hard to get like 32nd place at a regional where there's like just a couple hundred people. So eventually I was like, I'm dipping, I'm done. For whatever reason, I said I don't have the luck that you need to be good at Yu-Gi-Oh. That was exactly what I said. I don't have the luck that you need. So I was getting ready to dip entirely. That was when I found Edison, and I play both for just a little while, and eventually I sell all of my modern cards. I say this format's terrible. The game is in a terrible place. I don't want to play this anymore. I jump straight into Edison, head first. I think that I'm going to be very, very good at it because I actually played back in the day. I was fucking terrible, okay? I was absolutely terrible. I was the worst player at our locals. Every locals I went to, I went 0-3 drop every time, 0-4, 0-5. Went to a tournament in Pennsylvania. All the big name players were there. Fraser Smith was there. Cairo King, a true hero, was there. Their friend Vinny was there. Steve Silverman, Sean McCabe, all the big name players were there. I went 0-5 at that event with Christiasworn, with James Ark's Christiasworn deck. I lost every game. Not every match. I lost every... I did not win a game at that tournament. Not a game. That was when I had the epiphany that Yu-Gi-Oh in general was not for me. I almost quit. Thankfully, with the support from my peers, shoutouts to Justin Morgan and Blake Bowman, they talked me out of hanging it up entirely because they said, you're just getting started. You're just getting started. Just give it some more time. So something had to give. I said at this point in Yu-Gi-Oh, it's something that I'm doing wrong. I can't blame this on luck anymore. I can't blame this on the deck bricked. I can't blame it on I got God-handed, because you can't stretch that kind of mentality across 1,000 matches and it always have that common denominator. It did have a common denominator, and that was the fact that I was not good. Everything that I had learned about Yu-Gi-Oh, the fundamentals of which I played on, the fundamentals of which I deck built on, everything was wrong. Everything, the foundation was wrong. The whole house was just falling down because the foundation was terrible. Everything I learned was wrong. That's when I stopped listening to people in YouTube comments. No offense, I love you. I love all you guys, but there were some really bad comments back when this was Dark Magical Gaming. A lot of people just thought they knew what they were doing, but they just didn't. I kind of stopped listening to randoms just at locals. And that's where this quote by from 10-Foot D's Why Yu-Gi-Oh! Is Like Poker video, that's where this comes from. It says, advice that you get from regular players will nearly always be wrong, oversimplified, and unhelpful. These guys don't know what they're doing. They really don't. Learning and listening to them will merely only keep you at their level, because this is commonly seen when a new card comes out, right? Like, this deck is bad. This deck is bad. This card immediately just destroys this whole deck. You can't play this deck anymore because this card just destroys it. That kind of thinking destroyed me. It destroyed me listening to people. Instead, I started listening to people with real credibility. I started listening to myself. I started doing the work and doing the research. Now, I could go back to modern format right now with everything that I have learned from Edison and be way more successful than I ever had before. I don't want to do that because, truthfully, I don't want to put the time in. I'm a dad now, and my life is a lot different. I could make the time, but I'm not going to prioritize time for advanced format Yu-Gi-Oh! Over Edison and this channel. So I know what it takes to get there now, and it's very, very simple. It's very, very simple. And you just have to be willing to put in the work. You have to listen to podcasts, okay, by credible players. You have to watch videos by credible players. You have to read articles by credible players. You have to watch replays from credible players, watch the stream, dueling book, whatever. But most importantly, and this is something that I fell victim to, most importantly, you just have to play. Testing is not going to locals and playing 4 rounds with your local players. That is not testing. Testing is getting on dueling book and playing a dozen matches at a time over the course of weeks at a time. This is the only way that you can actually get better. I thought that playtesting was going to locals and playing 4 rounds and then drawing conclusions from that. The sample size is so small. And every time I hear somebody say, there's just this one player, I can't beat him no matter what I do. And that's not true. That doesn't exist. Because let's just say take for example, that if I sit down and I play a game, or I play matches against somebody who is 70% better than me. I'm 30%, they're 70%. That means they're going to win 70 out of 100 games against me, but there are 30 that I'm going to win against them. I'm just not hitting those numbers. And eventually, the more I play with the people that are better, the better that I'm going to be, to where that gets to be more like 50-50 based. So you just have to be able to put in the time. You have to put in the seat time. You have to play. You have to get on dueling book. If I were to play advanced format Yu-Gi-Oh! Again right now, I would completely forego going to locals, driving an hour to go to locals, and my local day would be Saturday, and I would get on dueling book at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I wouldn't stop until 5 or 6 that evening. I would just play match after match after match after match, play Malice and Rizale, all these different decks that exist in Modern. I'd play every single one of them until I figured out one that I liked. I would stick to it. I would grind. I would make my own decisions. I would draw my own conclusions. Then, once I had enough reps in with that deck, that's when I would drive an hour to go to locals, and I would probably win. And maybe that sounds cocky, but I would just put in so much time, because that's the kind of time that I've put into Edison. I went from going 0-5 at tournaments we traveled 10 hours to, okay? Within the same year, topping Ultimate Time Wizard, YCS Richmond, getting 4th place. And had I been the player now that I was then, I would have won the whole thing, because I can think about, I always replay all of my losses in my head. I think about all that stuff. Why did I lose? What could I have done differently? And every time I lost, with the exceptions of Tom Mack, I hate your Grand Mole, but with the exceptions to that, I can replay like my whole match against James Ark and think about where everything went wrong, why I lost. And that's just the growth of playing. The same year, the BBG 5K, okay? We had like 180 players. I got 3rd place at that. I won $500 in cash. I won this pin, and I put it in a shadow box because to some people, this was just a stupid token. They didn't care. People left them on the tables. To me, this was a symbol that if I put in the time and I get my mental game right, that I can do anything. I can be just as good as all the other players, but I have to put the time in to get there. I have to not nosedive off a cliff when I sit down and I lose because I opened up 3 Wolves, Plague Spreader, Gardena, and then drew into Celestia. I can't nosedive off a cliff because that can just simply happen. It's not going to happen that frequently. I was saying things like this happens to me every game, and that's just not true. This is a reminder, not only in Yu-Gi-Oh! Can I do anything I set my mind to, provided that I approach it level-headed, but I can do anything in my life as well. Talent is a pursued interest, and it doesn't matter what you're doing. If it's Yu-Gi-Oh!, if it's painting, if it's golfing, it doesn't matter. The longer you stick with something, the harder that you work, the better that you're going to get at it. And that's just a fact. And like, that kind of brings us into the transition of just talking about things that I did to get better at Edison format. One of the biggest tips is don't change the game state. If you're winning, if I have Jane and I have Arcus on the field and they've been going in every turn, attacking into 2 back rows, Mirror Force is gone, and then my opponent sets 1 back row, don't summon Goroth and try to be greedy. Just keep doing what's working. Make your opponent change the game state. Make your opponent normal summon their Shura and flip Torrential to get rid of your Jane and your Arcus. Because then, when it comes back to you and you can summon your next guy, your Goroth, they probably won't have an answer for it. Don't change the game state. That's a very surface level explanation of that, but just know how to play and when to play. Work on solving your deck's problems. Edison format as a whole, the decks are very inconsistent. I think that's what makes it great. I think that any deck can have a chance. I think that any deck can just come in and just win a tournament. No matter what your deck is, work on fixing those issues. And work on fixing them. Draw your own conclusions from games that you play, because what works for me may not necessarily work for you. That was something that I ran into a long time ago. I fell victim to, was trying to just completely net deck other players, how they played. And I don't really think that play styles really exist, but I do think in some ways people might make different decisions based on the way that they like to play. But essentially, just draw your own conclusions. Play 100 matches with Blackwings. Play 100 matches with Lightsworn. Play 100 matches with GBs. Draw your own conclusions, make your own lists, and just listen to yourself. This is a pivotal piece of advice that comes from Nazar Sarhan on Fraser Smith's I Am Nerd podcast. I don't remember the episode, but if you search for it, you can find it. The guy is one of the greatest minds to ever touch a Yu-Gi-Oh card. Don't go all in on going first. If you look at your deck list and literally you look at it and you say, if I don't go first, I lose, your deck has a problem. Your deck has an inherent flaw that you need to fix. This is one of the reasons why I never play Trap Dust Shoot in Lightsworn. Trap Dust Shoot is a very, very card if you go first and you draw it going first, right? But when you go second, it becomes much weaker. If you go second with that card in your deck, with Wolves in your deck, it becomes much weaker. On top of having Celestias, Beckoning Lights, Raikos that aren't good into their set Raiko. The list goes on and on. Look at your list. You don't need to necessarily build your deck to have 20 go first cards and 20 go second cards. But in my most recent winning my most recent winning Lightsworn deck, I main decked 2 Cyber Dragons and MST, which is kind of unheard of for Lightsworn right now, because I wanted cards that said if I go second, I still get to play the game. And it worked out great. Take calculated risks. Now this is an important lesson. We've all seen people play around Gores, right? In the early parts of the game, you get to make decisions like that. You get to say, if I attack directly right here and he has Gores, I don't have an answer. I lose, because it's not always just Gores. It's Gores turns into Caius. That puts another Dark in the graveyard. That becomes Dark Armed Dragon, right? Like the cards banished for Dark Armed become fuel for return, like the next turn. So you have to take calculated risks. Know when you should do things and when you shouldn't. If I'm at 1,500, my opponent's at 8,000, I no longer am able to respect Gores. I have to start trying to get lucky to win the game. I have to start attacking with everything. I can't respect Torrential anymore. I can't respect Mirror Force anymore. I can't respect Gores. I have to start trying to play lucky to win the game. Also too, this is kind of like an olive branch extended from that. Know all of your deck's lines, even the niche ones, and you learn this through playtesting, and it might take you 1,000 matches to learn one niche interaction. So let me just very quickly cover this. YCS Indianapolis, I got knocked out of the tournament by Hero Beat. An excellent player from Chicago. 3 months later, I was thinking, what could I have done different in that match? Now there's 2 examples. In our game 2, I drew Plague Spreader and Gardna. What I should have ended up doing was actually using those to make Catastor and attacking, because he didn't have any ways to deal with Catastor. Now that's kind of hindsight biased, but I didn't want to play into trap cards, but I needed to know to take a calculated risk to win the game. In game 3, I didn't realize a certain line that my deck had. So basically, the game state is something like, he has like Future Fusion, Absolute Zero, and Alias on the field. He's at like 4,500. I have 2 JD, Raikou, and Heavy Storm in my hand. So I'm thinking like, oh, I can summon JD, nuke the field, I lose a JD, I summon, I attack for 3,000, he's at 15, JD's still on the field, and he has like +5 on me. And I'm at like, I think I'm at 3,300. I actually still have my notepad from that game, because I've thought about it in excess so much. But 3 months later, I realized a line to victory, because what I should have done was summon both JDs, stack my Heavy Storm, summon Plague, normal the Raikou, make Armory Arm, and put Armory Arm on his Absolute Zero, attack both JDs in, that's 6,000, game's over. I hadn't tested enough for that event to even know that that line existed. And it may have only come up in 1,000 games, because that's the only time that combo has ever come up for me, and it hasn't come up since. So try to know all of your options, because it's so important, especially when you start playing against players that are as good as that guy is. Shouts to Rick Novak. Guy's a legend. So yeah, go with your advice and take it from a credible source. Don't listen to the people at your locals for the most part, unless they're really good players. You know, we've all heard the whole spiel back in the day. Pot of Desires is a neg 9, a neg 10, you know, like ultimately at the end of the day, if a card comes out, it's $100, it's a 3 of in every single deck that there is, it's not a bad card, guys. I'm sorry. That's just kind of like wrapping that segment up. The last little thing I want to talk about here is a topic that has recently resurfaced, and this is about Heavy Storm. Now, there was a deck profile done from a tournament. I'm not going to call out who said it, but basically the guy said, I had Heavy Storm, but I didn't play it because I was too afraid of Starlight Road. And I don't know where this quote comes from. I don't know if it was from an episode of his podcast or stream, whatever, but one of the greatest pieces of advice that I've ever received from Edison was Frazier saying, Heavy Storm is in your deck, so activate Heavy Storm or just take it out. Because I tried to do the same thing. I tried to say, oh, he might have Road. Ha ha ha, I'm going to be big brain. I'm going to let him bottomless 4 cards in my hand before I ever activate Heavy, and then I'm going to 1-for-1 his Starlight Road, and he's going to feel like an idiot. But the thing about it is after that, I have nothing left to play with. So I might as well have just activated the Heavy. If he had Road, the game's over. For me, I lose. But if he doesn't have Road, he probably loses. And you see players, this kind of goes back to calculated risks. And also to like evaluating your opponent's skill level is very important, and something that I have been working on lately as well, evaluating the skill level. If my opponent sits down in front of me and they pull out their rubber playmat from like a different, it's almost always from a different card game, and then they're like pulling out their deck and it's in old sleeves and they're like dropping their cards everywhere, I'm just going to assume that you're not quite as good, you don't take the game quite as seriously, which is fine. But what I have noticed from players like that is if they go Summon Laquari set 3, there is a Dark Bribe, there is a Starlight Road, there is a solemn judgment somewhere in those three, because they would not have done that if those three were not there. So that might be a time where I do maybe set a Raikou, or I summon a Lila first and try to like snipe one of those cards before I activate heavy. But when you watch the good players play, the very, very good players at top events, they will summon Lucario and they will set 3 with no protection, because what they're doing is they're playing the odds that you're not going to open heavy in your starting 6. And over time, if you take that and you apply it to X number of games, hundreds of games, they are going to win more games by going summon Lucario, set 3 without protection, than they lose because you drew Heavy Storm. Because Heavy Storm is a 1-up in a 40-card deck. You're not always going to open up Heavy Storm. So, kind of wrapping that up, guys, if you have Heavy and you say, I have Heavy Storm, I need this to go through to win, activate Heavy Storm. Because if your hand was that dependent on getting rid of those back rows, right, like, you have to have the card resolve. It doesn't matter that they had Starlight Road. You probably just lost anyway at that point. And that's something that I've done with Lightsworn. I've applied that to Lightsworn. I'm Celesting for 2. I'm JDing into multiple back row. I'm heavying into multiple back row. I'm black rosing into multiple back row. It doesn't matter, because sometimes it's just going to go through. I've played Heavy Storm against somebody that had 4 set back row, and they all got destroyed because they took the risk that I wouldn't draw heavy, and they got punished for it. Now, if I had been scared and not activated the heavy, I probably would have lost, because they had like Bottomless, D-Prison, like all these other cards that would have just stopped everything I did. But because I played Heavy Storm, because it was in my deck, which is, it's in your deck with the purpose and intentions of activating it, I won the game. That's about all that I have on this list for this episode. I don't know how long this has been going for, probably way too long. If I think of any other things I want to mention to you guys, I'll put them in the comments down below. But essentially what we talked about today is don't change the game state. Work on solving your deck's problems. Don't go all in on going first. Learn to take calculated risk. Oh, this is a good one. Let this be the closing topic here, because I actually missed a bullet point here. At some point in 2014, I heard the phrase Theedisonclub for the very first time. This is such a good one to go out on. Theedisonclub is completely worthless. I heard people saying, I don't have to play the game. I can just think about the game. That's not true. That's not a thing at all. A good example is people that get into Edison, they always ask me, Mike, do you think that Lightsworn Zombies is broken? And I'm like, no. They're like, but you can mill Mizuki, you can mill Plague Spreader, you can like set up Book of Life. I'm like, that's all true, but it's not good, because you're just thinking in theory. So what happens when Mizuki and Plague Spreader are in my hand and I don't have any zombies anywhere else? Now I have to draw Lumina to get those cards out of my hand, or I have to set them one at a time. That's where Theedisonclub comes in, and it's just worthless. It's absolutely just worthless. I think that you can use Theedisonclub, like maybe you kind of theory a deck together, but that should always lead into you doing a lot of testing with that deck. You need to play a lot with that deck, because just because it should work in theory doesn't mean it's going to work in execution. I've seen this time and time and time again. So let's stop this there. Theedisonclub, 100% worthless. Raw playtesting. Theedisonclub is for people that don't want to put the time in. They just want to say, I put in hours worth of theory into this deck and it didn't work, this game is bad, rather than putting in hours upon hours upon hours of actual playtesting and seat time. That is how you get better. That's how you learn if your deck is good or not. That's how you learn if you're winning because your deck is good, or you're just winning because you get lucky. If you win 25 games in a row, your deck is probably good. You didn't just get lucky. But if you're winning 1 out of every 15, you're probably just getting lucky. So let's end that there. There might be a part 2 to this at some point, because I'm sure I missed a lot of things. And as I go back and reabsorb media that I've listened to the past few years, I'm sure that I'll remember things that I wish that I talked about in this episode. But we'll be back. So, guys, my son's being born 24 hours. This might be the last time you see me for a little bit, but don't worry, we'll be back. I always come back. Thank you guys for watching. This is Mike from the Edison Club, signing out until the next one.